Hello, everybody, and welcome back to that Milan podcast. Martino Puccio, Matt Santangelo, alongside you guys. Gave you a few days to breathe after a couple of recordings on Sunday after the third straight loss that Milan had suffered. But before we get into everything for today's show, which isn't going to be that bad, again, we'd like to thank you all for the support. Subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your audio podcasts. At That Milan Podcast, follow us on Twitter, X, everywhere else that we have stuff. And again, subscribe to our other channel, That Milan Pod, where all those short videos get uploaded and hopefully parts of segments from podcasts whenever we have something interesting enough or good enough to talk about that you guys are willing to watch. Again, the link for that is in the description. So with that, Matt, we have a match to watch this weekend, and Milan play tomorrow against Lecce. Quick turnaround with this podcast. Milan beat them 3-0 in the first match of the season way back in September in the Paulo Fonseca days. Davide Bartesaghi got a red card in that one for, a challenge that was outside of the box. It was kind of unfortunate red for him. But again, this was one of the few and rare matches this season where Milan were in complete control. They scored multiple goals and they didn't concede. So, hoping for a repeat of that. Marco Giampaolo is on the bench for Lecce. He's been a manager over there. So again, Lecce kind of been known to be the giant killers within Serie A in their recent mainstay in the league. But this year, the wheels seem to have pretty much fallen off on all of that. We'll get into the expected 11 because it's completely different from what we saw last match against Lecce and let alone against Lazio. So your kind of overall vibes heading into this one, Milan have lost 3 straight. Times are very dire. This and Coppa Italia are really the only things that they have going on in Serie A. I mean, Milan are in 9th. There's not much left to say. So take it away here and your thoughts heading into this before we get into all the details, where there's a lot of moving parts.
Sure. So just going to give you guys a quick few insights. That's what FootMob kind of describes them as, just to kind of add further context to the conversation. So Lecce have scored 3 goals in their last 5 matches, so this isn't really a potent offensive team. They did get rid of Patrick Dorgu, who was actually one of their top goal scorers prior to his move to Manchester United in January. They haven't scored in their last 4 matches, and Falcone is ranked 3rd in saves per match in Serie A. So he faces a ton of shots, which obviously kind of is lending credence to that number being so high at 3.2. On the Milan side, they've scored 5 goals in the last 5 matches. They haven't lost to Lecce in their last 11 meetings, 7 wins, 4 draws, which obviously, again, you can't really take too much from that because that dates back years also as well. And they've lost their last 3 matches, something that they didn't do under Fonseca. I think the most they lost in a row is 2, or maybe they didn't even lose 2 in a row under Fonseca. I think there's a stat with that. As you mentioned, Milan are in 9th. They just got passed by Roma last weekend. Lecce are in 16th. They've conceded 43 goals, have scored 18. So by all accounts, this is a huge match for Lecce in their kind of conversation to get some breathing room at the bottom of the table with the relegation battle, which is obviously very intense right now. It's a perfect match for Lecce, let's be honest. They're at home. They see Milan are really struggling. They've lost 3 in a row, as we've mentioned. They can't seem to get their bearings right. And despite not being in the Champions League, this is a team that really hasn't shown that they're going to benefit much, at least as of right now, with that extra rest. I mean, aside from the Coppa Italia games, Martino, Milan have one competition to worry about, and they're still struggling with the whole calendar argument, which I know is a huge thing, right? How Milan are going to juggle all these competitions. They haven't juggled them well. So this is a really good opportunity for Lecce. It's one of those matches that you're going to get into that Milan seem to be favoring some rotation. That's what a lot of the reports have been building up this past week, saying Sergio Conceição is going to go for players that have shown a little bit more in training, that are working a little bit harder, and he isn't afraid to maybe perhaps scrap some of the key top players in the squad in favor of players that like Sotil or Bondo, who we haven't seen too much of, but maybe, again, he does value some of the things that we are not seeing and we are not privy to because it's happening in training.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think heading into this, regardless of the three-game losing streak for Milan, you mentioned
Mhm.
Lecce is right there in the relegation fight. I mean, like, let's just talk about one of the main storylines for to
Yeah.
begin with. So Milan are going to be without their starting goalkeeper Maignan because he got suspended for an and fined 15,000 euro for what was described as a intense argument with the referees in the tunnel after the match against Lazio. Again, regardless if you think the penalty was correct, incorrect, I mean, there's zero consistency within Serie A,
Mhm.
right? Because Milan fans think there's some great conspiracy against them when it comes to the referee. And I'm here to tell you all that you're insane, you're wrong, and quite frankly, there's no conspiracy theory. The referees just suck. Sometimes there's explanations for things, and they're just not good. Like, this happens to everybody. You see it from every fan base, barring maybe one to two who live on a different planet when it comes to this kind of stuff. There isn't a conspiracy. Unless you can prove any of this, please stop living in the mid 2000s where Calciopoli was the thing. We're 20 years into the future. 20. Yes, that's how long it's been. A lot of time has passed.
Mhm.
Please, please move on. For your sake, my sake, I don't want to keep talking about this. There is zero consistency with it, right? Because the penalty that was given for Lazio, it in reality made no sense, and it was soft, right? Because Isaacson had kicked the ball out of play. He had absolutely zero chance of scoring that. Just like the reasoning was for not giving Tijani Reinders that penalty against Roma, was that Reinders couldn't get to the ball. Gee, where's the consistency with that? So that's where I understand frustrations are coming from. But Maignan is a leader for this team. He has been the captain under Conceição. So going into the tunnel to get suspended, and listen, Milan should be able to take care of Lecce with Sportiello in goal. That is not really the point I'm driving home at. The larger point here is that their goalkeeper, one of their leaders, one of the guys up for an extension to get paid a lot of money, has once again shown that he can't show up when it matters most. And to me, that shows Rocky leadership. It shows Rocky mentality. And I'm not talking about Rocky Balboa. I'm talking about the type of that is an up and down roller
Yeah.
coaster type of event. You can't do this. I'm sick of it. Like, honestly, like this, he hasn't had as bad as a season as some people would like to say. He's had a really rough few weeks. There's no denying that.
Basically 2025. Yeah.
2020, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
2025 has been a mess for him. I thought he was good in 2024, first half of the season. I had no real arguments about that. Couple poor moments, but overall good half by Maignan. But
Mhm.
guess what? Milan aren't paying up in an extension for one half of a goalkeeper. They're not paying up for this guy to argue with the refs and get suspended in a match. And where, guess what? Milan need 3 points. They
Mhm.
need this, right? Talk about revenues all the time. They need to secure qualification. Europa League is not completely out of the question for them, whether it comes via Coppa Italia, good luck beating Inter over 2 legs, and then obviously qualifying within Serie A. Matt, like this is, I'm not blaming Maignan for everything, but again, this is, it's not so much even a microcosm because it's a pretty big deal. This is another symptom of Milan's negative environment here costing them because again, their goalkeeper's not going to be in a match in which they desperately need 3 points, regardless of opponent.
Sure. So, I mean, I think, in moments like this, right, delicate scenario or situations for Milan, you need to have cooler heads, right? Cooler heads prevail. That's always kind of
Yeah.
been one of the big phrases, right? When it comes to teams that are under the gun, scrutinized, dealing with a lot of pressure and not getting results, right? Ultimately, you can't get too rattled and let it show in your performances and in certain instances like this with Mike Maignan, right? And I look at this season for Mike Maignan, which has been a pivotal one, right? Based on where he's at in his career, right? I think he's 29 years old. This is
Yeah.
probably going to be his
Last
last
big
big
contract.
contract. And, by all accounts, if you look at the body of work he's accrued as a Milan goalkeeper since he arrived as the Gigi Donnarumma replacement, he's been worthy of more
Absolutely.
money of this deal. But what I look at this year is interesting, right? Because he's taken on recently the captaincy, right? He's taken on a lot more responsibility with certain individuals, maybe in defense, like Tamori and others, not really being consistent, even guys like Rafa or Theo not being really consistent. So you look to the players that you can kind of point to and say, who's been our reference point? Who's been that consistent guy, that gel, the glue player in this team that's kept it all together despite what's happening? And when you look at Mike Magnan's situation, it's funny because all the biggest criticisms that people had of Mike Maignan, amidst all the talk of a new deal, was Martino, can he stay healthy? I'm concerned. He's been healthy this year. He's just not performed.
He was even healthy last year to an
Right.
extent,
He's
too, yeah.
proven that he can stay healthy. And that hasn't been really a concern under two coaches and dating back to Pioli's 3. So now it's now a matter of how do you see this guy trending going forward? Goalkeepers tend to age better than outfield players. We know that, especially in Serie A, right? 29 is not old. He's in his prime as a goalkeeper. But when you look at the sort of turbulence of this project, you look at so much uncertainty that's surrounding them. You, again, to your point, these things are unacceptable, in my opinion. He needs to be the reference point that says, like, in many ways, what Conceição said a couple weeks ago, where Theo got the red card against Feyenoord and Sergio took it on the chin and said, like, I'm not blaming him for this defeat. It's on me. Mike Maignan, after that penalty played out on Sunday, needs to be the vocal leader, confront the media, not Matteo Gabbia, Mike Maignan, and say, you know what, regardless of the decision, I can't put my team in that position. We needed results. We needed something from this game. And my challenge, my red card inducing tackle took points from this team in a match where we absolutely needed something.
And it's not
That's
even the
what I
only
wanted to hear. Not a fine, a suspension, and now all of a sudden, again, a Marco Sportiello. Like, it's one thing after the other because Marco Sportiello has not played many games. I think he's played 1 or 2 this year, right? Now you're asking him, again, professional keeper, to go into a match like this where there's a lot of pressure. He has to be on his game to deliver a really good performance for a defense that has not been steady, for a midfield that's been overrun and really not playing that well right now, and a team in totality that's underperformed and underachieved this year. So the timing of this is very unacceptable, especially for a player who, again, has been at this club and knows what he represents as the captain.
I mean, I think it's fairly obvious. I mean, we were generous enough to leave out his mistake against Torino, which ultimately cost him that match as well. And again, like a lot of people love to argue on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it anyways. And people were upset at my suggestion of selling Maignan and Theo Hernandez. Put it this way when I say something like that. And this is very important. Where are Milan right now with them? Where are they? Once again, how many years in a row have we done this? That these supposed great players, who on their day are terrific, there's no denying that. However, how many times are they on their day? And on top of it, in the past 2 years, at least when it comes to Theo and Maignan, you could even say 3 years, because there's been injury issues going back that far. And then when he's been healthy, he has been unable to replicate his first season at the club, which was phenomenal and one of the best that we've seen actually from Milan keepers. So for that, I look to everyone and I say, so we're going to pay a goalkeeper X amount of money when he kind of doesn't improve us that much in the grand scheme of things, because he's making as many errors as I've seen any other decent goalkeeper make for this club. How much better has he been than Diego Lopez at his prime right now? There's a lot of things to say about that. And for me, it's a goalkeeper who has a lot of value. You mentioned someone who's in his prime as well. If Milan are able to sort of link up this extension and you're able to fetch at least 30 million, like just say on the floor side of things, 30 million at least for a goalkeeper, my goodness, you make that move every time. And a lot of people are just trying to sit here and say, oh, we can't replace him. How are we going to? Okay, well, you replaced Maignan, Donnarumma. You had 13 million there for a goalkeeper, regardless if he was on the last year of his deal. You guys had no problem doing that. I understand if it's under different management, but operating under this idea of that we have to stick with the team that we have now. And people love to rip on management, and rightfully so. They've been terrible. But I ask people this question too. Management also decided to keep these players. And with that, they trusted these players. And they're in talks of negotiations to extend these players. So therefore, they believe in them and they chose these players. And these players are failing. So why are we not also getting on management for maybe holding on to these guys for too long? Because now they're both entering in the final year of their deal.
It's a really good point.
And we're sitting here trying to say to ourselves, we're trying to justify what's happening. Milan are not good enough, guys. And we need to accept that. And on top of it, these players are not as good as we had hoped for them to be. Now, do I think they could like come in, put in great performances to sort of end the season? Yeah, I don't think that's out of the question. But you know what? It doesn't take away from what we've seen the past few months. When you're at Milan, you're getting paid top dollar, and something everyone loves to criticize Rafael Leao over, who's been far more consistent than everyone else, but he's gotten the most shit. But I ask you the question, does it take away everything that Maignan and Theo have done the past 18 months, which has been subpar? No. And that's where I'm tired of it. Because if they want more money after being subpar, then I have a problem with it. If they were sustaining that level that they had a couple years ago, I have no problem. I have no quarrels. This has been long going. This has been long withstanding. This is a problem. And I'm just more frustrated with Maignan. I think if out of the two, Maignan can bounce back. I really don't have more points on that. I guess Sergio Conceição, kind of going rogue in a way with this expected 11, which I'll pull up right now. I mean, this is, again, it's just expected. There's no proof to this.
The lineups have been the league, like the lineups, just to kind of add to it.
Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of the lineups that have been kind of coming out, at least the past couple months, I want to say, a lot of times they've been quite wrong. So again, just take what you guys see on the screen
with a grain of
context.
Salt,
but there's a possibility we see still Rafa there and the normal guys, but just to add.
I mean, look at this. Two wingers here in the situation where we're pushing Pulisic to the 10. I mean, Santi Jimenez not getting the start here. Abraham's down. Theo's out. Fofana is out. Fofana, huge reason as to why Milan had that red card with Pavlovic. I mean, that turnover in the box. I think he's right to sit Fofana. I don't think Fofana deserves to start. Questionable move here with Bondo, but I mean, like, how much does he actually trust Musa after he subs him off after 35 minutes?
Yeah.
Jimenez getting put in at the right wing. What does that say about Chukwueze? I mean, like, so many different players and situations and circumstances are being sat, being benched, and not even giving opportunities against sides like this. And again, if this is true, I'm off on Conceição here. I don't understand this. Bartezaghi, I can kind of understand in a way. Theo has been really poor. I don't think he was that bad against Lazio. Outside of that first goal concession where the guy's jogging back and doing a really poor job, I have issues with it. Reinders, again, I mean, we're putting the Porto guy out of position. He's clearly not thriving as much. João Felix, the fact that he's even in bubbles there infuriates me. He shouldn't even be anywhere near the pitch. Shouldn't be playing again for this club. So Till, I mean, unless Rafael Leao is hurt, this is the longest break Milan has had in between matches in 2025. And we're not starting our best player who has gotten goal contributions, Matt, for the club in the past couple of matches. I'm infuriated by this. I'm thoroughly annoyed. I don't even know what to say anymore when it comes to this sort of stuff. Sergio is putting out a lineup that just doesn't make sense to me. A lot of players who have not played together in this, and you're basically expecting to beat a team in Italy away that is desperate, as you had mentioned, to avoid relegation. So I don't think this is the time that Sergio should be going and messing around like this, to be quite honest with you. But how much does it matter at the end of the day, right? Because they sit ninth. So go ahead on your potential thoughts on these lineups here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Martino. I know you use some pretty strong words, infuriated, and those are all befitting of what this current Milan is and what it's brought to this fan base. But I'm not going to react too strongly to this because I think this seems like a little bit more of an over-the-top rotation. This doesn't even seem realistic to me, in my opinion. Gabbia, again, well, let's go from the back. So Maignan suspended, obviously. Walker, we brought him in for a reason, right? He's been banged up in the past couple weeks, so him at right back is fine. Gabbia, I myself would have liked to see more Gabbia, and I think even his agent
both said that
and said that he deserves a little bit more. He's proven that he can play, for this club. Malik Chow, I mean, again, you really don't have any options. Pavlovic is out. Tomori, what's going on with him?
He's gone,
right. Bartezaghi, with the whole Theo situation, him being. That's more like a message sending rotation, in my opinion, amongst some of the others. But overall, like, I don't necessarily hate the fact that he's so much sending a message and saying, you guys are not performing. We've lost 3 games in a row. I've played Theo. I've played Leao. I've played Pulisic. I've played Hernandez with the G. I've played Felix. I've played my 11, my best 11, and what I think many would believe to be the best 11, and it's gotten me 3 losses in a row. It's gotten me booted from the Champions League, right? So, in a way, based on everything that's happening, I don't fault Sergio for this, because I think at some point, if it's not going to be management making changes, and Sergio knows it feels like he's a dead man walking with this job. He only signed for 6 months and looks like that he might not even last the season if results continue to plummet.
Yeah.
I don't hate this too much. I, for one, don't believe, again, as I mentioned, this is going to be as aggressive of rotation. I think
I have a quote for you to back that
warrants some rotation for sure, because I think that if you're not going to be able to play a guy like Bondo in a match like this, then when are you going to play him? You're not going to play him against Inter in the 2 Coppa Italia games.
Well, I think like maybe easing him in. I get you. I think you're completely right on that. We could get.
But Jimenez at right wing is odd. Like that's
100%. And to back up your point here and what you were kind of saying, this quote is good from him from this press conference earlier today, and it regards about the exclusion of some of the big names. So I'll just read it off. I don't want to lose. I'd be a masochist to think putting a team that isn't best to win the match just for the sake of it. Then there are other moments. There are 90 minutes or more. There's this management to do, and they pay me for this. I choose based on the form of the players. For example, one who has a lot of quality and is not physically in shape or in training doesn't give me the right sensations. Meaning he's obviously not going to play these guys if he's not
getting the right feeling from them.
Yeah, it's not that they sign to always play. Whoever gives me more guarantees plays. Will the leaders play tomorrow? I'm the leader. I'm the one who pays. I guess it's just a weird. That's how Italian goes sometimes. Will the leaders pay tomorrow? Listen, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be that much of an over rotation. Like Jimenez right wing is just odd. Like Chukwueze, I mean, he scored a goal. Like he does a terrible job of tracking back at times. It's also always not losing the ball, getting bodied.
Yeah,
it's sort of like you would have maybe had thought he got rewarded for that goal. It's hard to read where Sergio looks.
It's also not beyond the realm of possibility, Martino, that he makes a sudden change like he did with Musa. Hey, Jimenez at right wing is not working. Here's Chukwueze. You don't know. He might be.
And how do you think about that? I think that's just also like a sort of like a reflection of where management was at after they're like quickly selling their players in January after they had just signed it. It's just an admission of mistakes immediately. And to me, that's just also a domino effect of overthinking and over, analyzing situations. And instead of just keeping it basic, I'm putting my best players out there, or if Pulisic is hurt or like carrying a knock, I don't want to use him too much. So how about the guy who gets paid a good amount of money in Chukwueze? I think it's like really difficult. I think the Leao thing has to be training based or injury based. There's no way you sit Leao based on form. He's the one guy. He scored the goal against Bologna. He put them in front. They couldn't hold the lead. He's the one who gets them to tie the game where he's being doubled. They're down a man against Lazio. Like, again, I'm not saying he's playing phenomenal, but he's actually the only one doing something.
Yeah, I think the one thing with Rafa is interesting too, because I think that Sergio seems to, in my opinion, I think there are certain players within this squad that I think that need to be held to a higher standard.
Sure.
And I think Rafa is one of them. I'm not saying that he hasn't met that standard or he's done this or done that. I also think that in recent weeks, you can see the burden of trying to be the one carrying the weight of this debacle and this abysmal season. And it feels like Rafa's been, in my opinion, in the media, amongst the fan base, and everyone's gotten their own, shit sent their way.
Sure.
He's been kind of like the poster boy, the whipping boy when it comes to like, okay, well, Milan's fault. Okay, fine, management coach, Rafa's underperforming because he's the main guy. And if you're the main guy in a team like this that's underperforming, everyone's going to lock in on your stars, Rafa being the main guy, right? He's the main star. That's number one. Number two is Rafa over the past month and a half, right, It's been coming out in the media. It's been coming out with Sergio himself saying, Rafa hasn't been 100%. He's been playing injured. Pulisic was the same thing. And in my mind, I think that Sergio might be looking at this game and saying, hey, maybe the full week off is what I need to give Rafa, because I'm going to need him down the stretch. I'm going to need him full.
Yeah. I've thought about this too.
So he might be looking at it and thinking, all right, if I have to consistently run out Rafa, a player that, again, has been kind of like navigating the past month and a half with like some, not maybe severe injuries that are going to keep him off the field. And I know you and I are in agreement that, if you're on the field, we're going to judge your performance accordingly, regardless if you're 75, 72, 85%, 100%. But I think that he's looking at this game against Lecce saying, well, I need to give Rafa a break at some point. Like, I can't just keep playing him. And if I can't give him a day off in a match like this, and have someone else that we brought in January within this squad give me a decent enough shift to do that, then what does that say about this team, the strength of this project? So that I can kind of defend a little bit more in the rotation. I think Theo is full-fledged, pure on, like, Sergio's frustrated with him. He's not performing. It's all the talk about the whole contract. He's still committing the same reckless fouls. He almost could have got one last week against Lazio, where he basically back kicked. I forgot who it was.
Marosic.
Right. And he hasn't been, on top of that, he hasn't been playing good. So now he's thinking, I'm going to play Bartazagi. Like, this guy, he hasn't played
pretty good in features.
Yeah. So again, the more you kind of look at a lot of the individual rotations, rather than looking at the rotation in totality, you could kind of understand what Sergio is doing here, in my opinion. But again, the 4-2-3-1 that we just saw, that was from Gazzetta. There's a real possibility we see some of that come to fruition, and there's the possibility that we see, maybe none of it or all of it. Who really knows? But based on the words you just said showed from Sergio, they asked him about Santiago Jimenez, who has struggled in a couple weeks. If he's not getting the service, it's really been a little bit more of a difficult thing for him.
He's been kind of unfortunate with certain things. There was like a back and forth I had with certain people on like Moose's pass to him. I thought both could do better in that situation. Yeah. I mean, I think he had enough time and space to finish the shot and not sky it. And Musa also had plenty of time to play a better ball to him. Yeah. Both things can be true. Again, to your point, just real quick on Leao stuff. Leao's going here taking a leadership thing in terms of commenting. Unfortunately, we're alone against everything and everyone. We still have time to put in positive results, and the group is more united than ever. Trying to send a positive message, and yet when you read things from Milan fans who, Conceição speaking about masochism, I mean, the replies reflect exactly that. It's ridiculous. Like, the guy is trying his best to be a leader here, and it's no good. When he comments, shut up. When he doesn't say something, why aren't you saying something of being a leader?
He doesn't care enough.
It's just the guy can't win. And honestly, it feels like some fans are going to drive the guy out. And I think it's going to be a rude awakening for a lot of people. I want to talk about something a little bit more positive and a little bit more exciting. I think Warren Bondo potentially getting his debut for Milan could be a positive. Only negative here, Matt, is what I kind of see, and it's not a negative in the sense of like that he's playing. It's a negative in the sense that he's just kind of being thrusted into the starting 11 here, having not played with anyone yet. You kind of would have liked him to ease in, maybe get a debut. Obviously, he was carrying a knock. They were hoping he would be ready against Torino. Obviously, they played so many games with Bologna and Lazio shortly thereafter. For Bondo here, getting in this match, and I believe it's Como before the international break. Listen, Bondo, we haven't been able to see him. He's the only one of these January signings that we have yet to see debut for the club. Obviously, he was carrying that injury. We don't see him, obviously, till March. Debuting immediately feels like a good amount of pressure for a player like that, but maybe it's kind of something that they need in the midfield. The midfield's really lacking, and we've known this. I think it's been actually Milan's weakest part of the team this year. I know everyone likes to highlight the defense and how rough that's been. The defense at times has put in good performances at times. For the midfield, I can't remember a stretch this year, Matt. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Of like at least 3 matches in a row where I'm like, that's good midfield. Midfield's doing well. They're
There was
producing.
there was one in
Yeah.
that run up with the 5 straight Champions League wins for Milan. Like in between, like Champions League
Yeah,
wise,
yeah, yeah.
Milan that midfield was playing well. Fofana was getting assists from the
I guess
midfield.
more so within Serie A. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. But
Champions League was kind of like funny
I
without
think generally
everything
speaking,
together.
like that was probably like the best football Milan played, at least from a results
Yes,
standpoint.
agreed.
I think on the topic of Bondo, and I'm a firm believer in this. I know you mentioned that you might be kind of throwing him in a situation like this, where again he hasn't played with any of these players in real time football minutes, aside from obviously the training ground, situation. I'm a big proponent of, if I want to give a player that's new to the team and that there's expectations for him to make an impact this season, that you give the player the start. And
Yeah,
the reason why I say that is you really don't know what the ebbs and flows of a 90-minute match are going to be, especially for Milan, right?
yeah,
So the match can change on its head like that with this team. Red card, freak, defensive error leads to a
yeah,
goal. Now all of a sudden, Bondo gets 7 minutes at the end of a match that you're chasing, right? In a match like this, I almost rather Sergio say 4 or 5 days in advance on the training ground, hey, Warren, you're starting against Lecce on the weekend away. He has the mindset. He can lock in. He understands what he needs to do as far as preparation is concerned, mentally, physically, for that game. And you give him the opportunity with a clean slate, a clean 90-minute start, 0-0, to get into the rhythm, get into the pace, get that involvement going.
that's fair.
Versus coming in the 75th minute, hey, it's 1-1, Milan's chasing
Mm,
the game. Now all of a sudden, like, you're kind of putting him in a position where things are going to be a little more magnified when it comes to misplaced passes, not covering his zones, all these sorts of things. So I actually like Bondo starting in a match like this. I think this midfield needs some defensive bite. It's
yeah,
been getting
yeah. It needs a
overrun.
jolt. Yeah,
Next to Tijani is a little concerning because Tijani's not a true defensive midfielder. He's not someone that can deliver at a high level in this area, in
correct.
my opinion. He's more, effective going forward. But I think in a match like this, I'm okay with Bondo getting the start. I think that these are the oppositions that you should be showing some faith in young players and players that you need something from, because right now Musa's not cutting it. Fofana's not cutting it. He's not playing his
Yeah,
best. Fofana's been on the bench in most matches because of Musa, who also hasn't been doing that well.
no,
So I, I don't mind it. I truthfully don't mind it. I think Bondo showed quite a few things at Monza. And there's a reason why Milan went out there swiftly to get him as the sort of Benacer replacement. And this is a reason why they have been looking at this player since when he was back in France. So I'm
yeah.
excited for it, and I think this is a good opportunity for him. And I think that happens with the start versus coming off the bench.
Well said. Yeah, I mean, again, the realistic thing is like, what are the options
Of
midfield wise?
course. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It is very much not there. All right, so prediction time. I mean, it's really difficult with the lineup situation. It's really like we have no clue. So with that, I have a funny feeling Lecce score within the first 15 minutes, and then Milan bounce back after that. I think Milan end up winning this game. They have to win this game. And hey, listen, if you can get this, head back to San Siro against Como. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear whatever positive chatter is coming out of my mouth right now, but hey, there's a possibility to get 6 points, get to the break. Como's going to be incredibly difficult. I'm not really trying to look ahead to that. We'll obviously do that and discuss it further. But for me, I think a 2-1 victory for Milan here
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
against Lecce.
Again, I'm gonna
Again, nothing is locked in stone. I don't even like
yeah, I'm
have a
gonna
lot of faith.
keep saying the same thing I've been saying for the past dozen or so recordings, Martino. Just get results. I
Yeah,
truthfully do not care. It can be a Fugazi penalty in the box and some bad officiating going Milan's way, a freak red card for Lecce. I don't care. Just win games. Give the fan base something to be joyful about,
Yeah.
positive about for
And
a
can
day. For a day.
sit on for a week instead of like this 3 games again, like
Yeah,
you get
like
ready to like
exactly.
take this
So
haymaker.
2-1, Milan find a way to win this game in nasty fashion is the word I'm going to use.
Yes. Hopefully. Listen, I want to say one final thing because I almost forgot about this, and I've been thinking about this over the past few days as we finally got a break from doing some podcasting and watching this match. I think there's no mistake that everything has been completely dire at this club right now, from a leadership perspective to an on-field perspective, and to an extent, finances because of lack of qualification for the major competition coming up. And it feels like the club in itself doesn't feel like what we've known it as and to be successful. For me, at the end of the day, this is when your definition of being a true fan comes through. And with that, I'm so annoyed that my phone is fucking ringing at this time as I'm saying this. But my point is this: there's never a better time to be a Milan fan than when you're in the dark, when things are looking bleak and dull. This is when winning, and when they do eventually win, means so much, because you're in hell right now, guys. We know it. And the standards of what this club are and should be are not even close to that level. And I think when you're here supporting the team week in, week out, you're listening to us or you're listening to whoever, you're consuming Milan, and you just want better days, remember days like this when they win, because you were here for all of it. And I'm not saying it's this great badge of honor that you want to go through or that people should go through. Nobody wants to go through this. We just settled this for a decade. I don't want to go through it again. It seems like we're on the cusp of something negative for a little bit. But I just want to say that supporting this team in moments like this are what makes a true supporter, because we're not leaving them. And we're still rooting for 3 points. And we're giving a shit about 11 guys that are playing in Italy against a team called Lecce, against a former manager that was a complete debacle. So, yeah, that's just my main point of I still love being a fan of this club and being a supporter of this club, talking about them and hoping for better days, because it's terrible right now.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, keep the faith, try to keep positive. Maybe better days are ahead. Maybe things can be turned around. I know that it might not be this season, but again, this is still our club, and until they don't exist anymore, we're going to keep supporting them. So, any
Well
final
said.
thoughts that you want,
Well
or
said.
things to say?
Yeah, no, as always, just thank you guys to the community for supporting,
Yes.
helping the other channel get some numbers up. We're also rapidly approaching 1,000 followers on X. So if you guys don't follow there, make sure you guys do so at that Milan Pod. The community has been growing despite all of the uncertainty and turmoil surrounding this team. And I think that's a testament to the true fandom, as Martino just mentioned, right? That this
Yes.
club has brought, right? The fact that we're still struggling, we're not getting results, we're missing out on main objectives, crucial objectives, and you guys are still here. You guys are still
Yeah.
watching. You're still getting a ton of comments, a ton of follows, subscribes, all that good stuff. So that's a huge thank you to you guys, because as Martino just mentioned, when we do get out of this rut and Milan does get back to prominence and being, the team that not so long ago it was at the top of Italy and making runs in the semifinal of the Champions League, you're going to enjoy them a little bit more because you went through the shit with us like this that we're currently going through. So thank you.
Yes. And again, we're 62 subs away from 6,000, which is a great number. Again, be sure to follow us, Apple, Spotify, That Milan Podcast. Again, like Matt had mentioned, we're very close on X to 1,000 followers. Something we try to pay more attention to. Again, at Martino_Puccio there for everything. To follow me on Instagram, obviously on Twitter, at man_Santangelo for you, and at AC Milan Bros that you run with your brother. Again, thanks to Old Heart Rosanero, me Marco, that Milan Fan TV, Sempre Milan, Ali, Maddie, Torgrud, Milan Weekly Podcast with Vinny, Steve, Jan, Milan Coast to Coast with Fabio and Gio. Maybe missing another one or two. Max and Gino, the MLM
Max and Gino,
podcast
MLM.
as well.
Mhm.
Other than that, I do truly forget whoever else. So please don't take it personally. Try to
Kush.
shout out everyone. Kush, yes, thank you. Try and shout out everyone every single episode. We appreciate it. Matt's mustache appreciates it as well. Other than that, thank you and take care.